I know all of you are excited to kind of learn the recipes and or the recipe we're doing today and kind of dive into what we're making. So we're gonna give everyone a maximum of 2 minutes to go ahead and get ready and get to your kitchens if you're not already in your kitchens.
Yes, and you should have all received the recipe. So for those who may not have seen it, we are making pad see ew today, which is a popular Thai street food dish. So while I wash my hands, I'm gonna ask anybody who's cooking to grab a cutting board with a cutting board, a knife, and some sort of a wok or large pan. Have that ready, and then maybe turn on your heat low if your stove like mine is electric. It takes a minute to heat up. So we will get started with the cooking in about 1 minute, and then we'll go over all the ingredients if you need. And I do have a second camera highlighted here. And then also Bea has a cooking camera. So she will also be cooking with me step by step. So if I'm going too fast for you, Bea will probably be one step behind. But again, feel free to shout if we are going too fast. Um, so just a little bit of history behind this dish, or let us know if anybody has had this before. This is probably one of my favorite like go to easy weeknight meals. A lot of people get intimidated by cooking Thai food because they think it has so many ingredients, but this one is pretty popular. And I would say in Thailand, actually more popular than pad Thai. So in America, we know pad Thai super popular, but if you go to Thailand, most of the locals would be eating this over pad Thai, and it originated from a Chinese noodle dish, um, like char kway teow or a chow fun. So basically, it's a smoked rice noodle dish that is fried over high heat in a wok usually, and has only about 5 ingredients. So can't really see anybody's camera. I don't know who's cooking with me today, or if y'all are just watching, but we'll get started in just a second. And we have all the ingredients listed there. So I'll just show you real quick. I have these rice noodles, and these are fresh rice noodles. Sometimes it's hard to find the fresh rice noodles, so if you can't, don't worry. But fresh rice noodles like this, they probably will go bad in about 2 days, so they are meant to be used right away. If you can't find these, you can use the dried ones, usually like in the vacuum sealed pack. If you've ever made pho or eaten pho, they're the dried noodles like that. You just get the wider ones, and those will probably last in your cupboard for like a year. So you would just soak those and kind of bring them to room temp, so they're kind of malleable, if you will, or you traditionally use these rice noodles. So that is the main ingredient of our pad Thai. And we will also need some sort of Chinese kale or Chinese broccoli, or kailan. So I'll show you here. So these, if anybody's cooked with them before, they can be a little bit bitter. And in the US, actually, most of the time when you order pad see ew, it is with American broccoli. But if you go to Thailand, traditionally, this is what you get. And it's called Chinese broccoli because it has like a little floret here, if anybody can see that. And I'm using a carrot or two today. And then all the sauces listed on the recipe, I believe. And then I'll show you another super important ingredient. So this is coconut palm sugar, if everybody can see that. So sometimes it comes in like a jar and you scrape it out, or it comes in this kind of brick form. So if you have this brick form, and if you have your protein or whatever meat you're using today, we're gonna go ahead and prep that first. So I'm just going to shave some of that off. So some of you are probably wondering why the hell we're cooking a Thai dish. Right. So as I previously mentioned before, my parents are, well, my mom is Thai Lao. And so I was born and raised in America, but I actually went and I moved to Bangkok, Thailand. Kind of had a quarter life crisis, if you will, and decided one day that I was just going to book a one-way ticket and go to Bangkok. And I wanted to learn about my family history and also more about the culture and know where I was from. And so this kind of stemmed from me working with a lot of younger youth, I would say, or pre-college track students or high school seniors, and really trying to get them to learn where their history, but also learn their passions. And I was mentoring and teaching and doing this public programming and realizing like I didn't know where my own family was from and my own history. And so my idea was, I'm just going to go to Thailand and maybe backpack and maybe teach English, because that's what American people do, right? But this is usually what white American people do also. So I went there not knowing the language. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, as I mentioned, and didn't know what I was doing. And then soon found a foodie friend via Instagram, and basically started volunteering in a nutshell and working with refugee youth. And so my own parents had escaped from Laos 25 years earlier, and settled in America. And that's how I came to be. But the youth that I was working with were fleeing from all parts of the world, mostly from Vietnam. And so I started teaching English and mentoring them, going into red light districts, helping women and children that were survivors of domestic violence and trafficking. And so in this, I found that every time I was with them, they were hungry, right? They were malnourished, a lot of them were starving. And some of the time when I was eating or teaching English to them, that was the only meal that they'd had all week, or their only full meal. And so their attention span was super short, but also it kind of dawned on me, like, how can I impose my language onto them and basically try to force them to learn my culture or my language when their daily needs aren't even being met. And so the English lessons basically turned into cooking lessons. And because we were in Thailand and I didn't have access to the American food I knew, I started learning and teaching myself Thai food and Thai ingredients and recipes. So this is one of our favorite recipes from the nonprofit that I co-founded called Courageous Kitchen. So that's just a little history behind why I teach this. And I've been teaching Thai cooking classes for almost a decade now. So we're just going to jump into this. Trust me, it'll go really fast when we start cooking, but I will have you, whoever's cooking with me, turn on your pan now and crush your garlic and put a little bit of oil in with your garlic. So whoever is cooking, we're going to start with the oil and garlic, go a little bit more into our story as we cook, but let's get cooking. And I've already pre-cooked my meat. So if you have not cooked your meat, I'm going to have you do that now. And don't worry, we'll have time at the end to ask questions and catch up. And if you see Bea's camera there, she's using, I think, Impossible meat. So if anybody has questions at the moment about the dish or anything, we can feel free to ask. But I am going to go ahead and throw in my oil and my garlic. And we don't really need the pan to heat up too much when we put the oil and garlic in, because if your pan is too hot when you're cooking this, your garlic will burn right away. And pad see ew is typically not a spicy dish. So if you want to add in Thai chilies or other type of chilies, you can do that also right now. So everyone can see my pan. Just gonna add a touch of oil, my garlic, and my meat. And I do like 2 to 3 cloves of garlic per person because I love garlic, but this is totally optional. And if you've ever had drunken noodles, Thai drunken noodles, it's pretty much the same dish, just Thai drunken noodles have more veggies and no egg. So, yeah. Go in and start this. So one of the reasons why Bea and I started Tuk Tuk Box was because of the pandemic, right? So I was teaching these Thai cooking classes, and when COVID hit, we couldn't do any programming anymore for the kids of Courageous Kitchen and for the clients that I had in the US. And so a lot of past clients or customers would ask if I could still teach classes or if I could still give them ingredients and recipes. And so Bea and I were trying to figure out kind of like what's a sustainable way that we can still raise money and awareness for the families back in Thailand, but also provide ingredients for people. And so I started sending out like these meal kits and snack boxes. And then, of course, that's kind of the inception of Tuk Tuk Box. So now we send out snack boxes full of Southeast Asian goodies, but we also have different merch and different partnerships with other brands. And so this like shirt that I'm wearing right now, you can see, Spread Asian Joy, is our latest drop. And if y'all stay till the end, we might have a little giveaway. Let's go in here. So my meat's already cooked, so don't worry if you're not to this point. But I'm just going to teach you how to do an all-purpose stir-fry sauce. So for the sauce, so if your meat and your garlic is cooked, we want our black soy sauce. So we're going to do, where's my spoon? Probably about 1 tablespoon of black soy sauce. I never measure, I just throw it in. But this is what gives our sauce, our noodles color. We want a nice golden brown. I'll add a little bit more. And then we want about 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce per person. And I just eyeball, you know, Asians don't really have recipes. So I'm gonna throw, I'm eyeballing, but it's about 2 per person. So I'm making for 2 people here. And then we want a touch of fish sauce. So one thing to know with fish sauce is to never put it directly in a pan without anything else, because then your house is definitely going to smell for like a month. Make sure you have something in the pan. And then we're going to put about a teaspoon per person, or a little bit heavier, of regular soy sauce. So I'm just really seasoning up the meat here. And then I'm going to throw in my carrots and my noodles. So any hard vegetable. So sometimes you go to restaurants and they have like Napa cabbage in here. But if you get this on the street in Thailand, it's literally just going to be the broccoli. So I'm going to throw in my carrots, my noodles, and then we're almost done. And with this dish, I actually don't like my veggies too soft. I like still a crunch, and that is typically how you would get it in Thailand as well. So I'm going to throw in about a handful of these noodles per person. And just remember, the more you stir, the more they're going to break. So you literally want to do this in like 2 minutes, as long as your meat is cooked. It smells really good. Okay. So all we want to do is get all of these noodles coated. And then I'm just going to add in a little bit more of the black soy sauce and that teaspoon of palm sugar that black soy sauce gives a sweetness, but it also helps to caramelize the food and to give it that nice golden brown color. I'm sure y'all can hear the sizzle here. So once your noodles are softened up, then we're going to throw in our kale. So I'm just going to chop some of this up. And Bea, feel free to add anything if you want to add some tips of your own. For the kale stalk, we just cut it all the way up, and we use the stem and everything. Has anybody ever cooked Thai food before? Feel free to let us know in the chat what some of your favorite Thai dishes are, or some of your favorite family recipes. Or if you like yours extra saucy, like I like mine a little bit more wet or like juicy, if you will. So I'm gonna add just a touch more sauce, a little bit of everything. So a little bit more soy. And this is how my mom cooks, you know, it's like I'll call her and be like, how do I make this? And she just says, you have to watch. There's no recipe. So one of the things with Tuk Tuk Box is we are sharing recipes and sharing stories from our community. And so that was one of the difficult things, was trying to collect these recipes and stories, because, you know, our cultures are very auditory. Storytelling is a huge element, but sometimes there's not a lot of written history. So every week with Tuk Tuk Box, we try to highlight a new story or somebody from our community. One of the ways we do this is through our snack and chats, which is like an Instagram live, where we have different chefs or community members just like this coming in and sharing, or we do it through our newsletter. So if you're interested in Southeast Asian recipes or sharing your story or your family stories, we'd love to have them.
For me, when I cook this dish, I like to char my noodles a little bit. So I let it sit a little bit longer and then kind of like scrape it off the bottom. That way I get the char from the wok. But yeah. And I don't like mine too saucy like Christy's. I like mine a little bit with crunch.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love the char, and that actually is where a lot of the flavor is. So some people worry about burning, but again, that's like the good part. So if you can all see mine now, it's completely coated with the sauce. So I'm gonna just move everything to the side, and we're gonna crack the eggs in, and then we'll be done. So while I do this, I'm just gonna mute.
And for me, I like my eggs a little bit crispier. So I put a little bit more oil than some people do. But then it's almost like restaurant style, I guess you could call that. And I usually like to crisp it up and then I mix it in after.
This is the same method that I would do for like fried rice or pad thai. So we want to cook our egg. If you're doing it my style, cook our egg almost completely on the side, and then we're going to fold everything in. And while this is setting here, we're just going to put a little bit of black pepper or white pepper. It looks really good.
And my eggs are extra orange because it's from my chickens in my backyard.
So Bea, while I finish cooking and plating this up, do you want to give a little bit of your background, and then we'll plate and show?
Yeah, so like Christy mentioned, she and I were working together at Courageous Kitchen for a couple years, but prior and during that time, I do have a master's in public health as well as completing a master's in global health. So I did a lot of work in policy and advocacy. So a lot of work that I was doing was meeting with members of Congress as well as working in the California legislature on different topics around health policy, housing, education, access to resources, and things of that field. And so what I found was I was always sent in to advocate for another community other than my own. So I'd always go in there kind of talking about housing access or why education matters for a certain school district and things like that. But there was never emphasis on the Asian community. And as you all might know, especially since some of you are college students, you all might know about the model minority myth and how Asians are perceived to not have any struggles or perceived to be, I would say, in quotes, stronger in academia as well as like finance and things like that. But as we all know, that's not true. So a lot of the times I would talk about the Asian community when I'm advocating, but folks were not listening to me because data was showing, because there's no data disaggregation, data was showing that we didn't need any resources, we didn't need any help. So I was always screaming from the rooftops, like, what about my community? What about us? And so whenever I would discuss in these tables and in these like environments, you know, the community and the Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian, Pacific Islander community, I would ask them, well, when you think of Asian food, what do you think of? And a lot of folks would, you know, say the generalized, you know, fried rice, chow mein, things of that. But when I would ask them about Southeast Asian food, a lot of the times their only answer was Thai food. And we are beyond Thai land. And you could see that in the map that we had drawn. There's over 11 countries, which has diverse languages, diverse culture, diverse religions, and diverse food. But we all also have commonalities within our food and commonalities with imperialism, capitalism, and colonialization. So Christy and I kind of had to sit down and think, well, other than, you know, uplifting the Courageous Kitchen students, what can we do for our community here? And how can we advocate for them more? And so that's where Tuk Tuk Box comes in. It's kind of our, in quotes, vehicle, because the Tuk Tuk is a vehicle to bring these issues to light, to bring people to the table and kind of be that vehicle for our community, especially for, if you think about our parents, if you're second generation refugee or first generation even, was there a table for you or your parents when they arrived? And most likely not. And so Christy and I are hoping that through Tuk Tuk Box, we can start creating this table and start these conversations. And it, yeah, it looks like Christy's done plating. I should probably plate mine.
Thank you for sharing that, Bea. Yeah, it's so multi-layered, and I think it's important for us as women, but women of color, but also Asian American and Southeast Asian women, that we recognize all these intersectionalities and celebrate them. It's okay to be different. I mean, that's what the world is, right? But how do we celebrate and bring joy and uplift? And yes, with that, one of the main things is, of course, through food. So thank you. Somebody, Renee, said it looks amazing. I forgot the lime wedge. So normally you would put a lime wedge and then you put some red chili flakes and some pepper on top. I'm not even going to try it right now. I'll try it later. Um, I'll just give it
And I
to,
have a lime wedge.
yeah. So Bea has her lime wedge. So the lime wedge helps to cut down like any spiciness or just add some brightness to it. So I'll just leave that there and let y'all look at it while we move on. But if anyone has any questions so far about the dish, let us know. Um, and thanks for watching our quick demo. So again, one of the things that we did for Courageous Kitchen was we taught Thai cooking classes to the public, also corporate cooking classes, and now virtual cooking classes. So that is one of our most requested dishes, the pad see ew. And I believe we have the website, the recipe up on our website. If that was a little bit too fast for you to go back and cook if you want. So I'm going to have Allison bring back up our screen and then we can move into some questions. Okay. So if any of you are eating along with us, whether you're having pad see ew or not, grab a snack, grab some water, take a little stretch break, loosen up your shoulders. I know it's been a long day, but as Bea mentioned, you know, one of the things, especially in public policy and my background in hospitality and like nonprofit, we weren't seeing ourselves represented, right? So Tuk Tuk Box is our way of creating a table that we didn't find, but also knowing that these are things that maybe our parents, right, or our grandparents didn't have access to. And so through, I'll have you go to the next one, Allison. Through some things like historical trauma and the lack of inclusion in health policies is what really, really spurred us. And then one really important aspect that I think is often overlooked is mental health in Southeast Asian communities, but also in many communities of color. So, Bea, if you want to touch on this, feel free. I know you might have some valuable things to add here, and then show how we're kind of changing the narrative.
Yeah, so why Southeast Asian communities and why do we focus on the specific communities within Southeast Asia? Well, one, Christy and I identify as Southeast Asian, but both of us, I think, growing up, didn't really tap into the Southeast Asian community or our Southeast Asian heritage. And so a lot of things that we are doing now, along with others that we're working with, is tapping into that heritage and learning more about, like listed on here, historical traumas. For example, with my family, I didn't learn that I had Indonesian heritage until the last 5 years. And so my family actually used to live in Indonesia, my father's side, and he has 10 siblings, and he's the last of 10, but yet the only one born in the Philippines. And so my family, I found out, fled Indonesia because of a coup and changed their lifestyle, changed their views on anything really, and their culture shifted and assimilated to the Philippine culture so that they could be, I guess, not associated with their Indonesian background, not associated with the reason why they left Indonesia. So my dad's the only one who doesn't speak Bahasa Indonesia. And I grew up eating Indonesian food, but my family told me it was like regional Filipino food. And so I would eat things like gado-gado, nasi goreng, nasi lemak, and things like that. But when I would go to my Filipino friends' houses, I'd be like, "Oh, you guys are eating gado-gado this weekend?" And they're like, "What the heck is that? I don't know what is gado-gado. I've never heard of that." And so that's just some of the nuances within the community. All this unspoken, stories, unspoken trauma that our family members don't want to talk about, that even us as second, third, even first generation are rediscovering. And then the other pieces are more, I guess, policy focused or data driven, which is the lack of inclusion in health policies and the lack of mental health resources for Southeast Asian communities. So I'm not sure if some of you might know, but Asian American women are number 2 in suicide rates in the United States. And so within breaking that down, Southeast Asian women and men are at higher risk for self-harm, mental health challenges, and things of that nature because of the lack of inclusion, cultural diversity, as well as focus on data for mental health and other health issues. So a lot of the things that are happening is that we're falling through the cracks, and there's no one really focusing on advocating for the community. And as for all of you who are college students, this might be avenues that you might be interested in. So like, if you find passion within, your community, as well as like advocating, this is one area that you could kind of start looking at and thinking about, and think about your parents. Have they ever talked about mental health? Have they ever what are their views on therapy? What are their views on self-care? And by starting there and asking them that, as well as asking yourself, that's kind of the way that we could start moving into these changes that we are all seeking. But yeah, that's like a quick overview of that slide.
So with that, thank you, Bea. I know that can be some really heavy topics, right? And so, of course, we didn't always want to be centered as victims, right? Or tropes or stereotypes, or for people to think that we're monolithic, like everyone looks like. These are, outdated stereotypes and obviously not relevant, but some things are still happening to this day. And so it's been a rough year for a lot of us. It's been a rough few years, or just time in general being Asian American, or identifying as BIPOC, or just trying to figure out your identity. So instead of the stop Asian hate rhetoric that has been going around, we want to reframe that by saying spread Asian joy. It's like this shirt I'm wearing. So with the sale of this shirt, we are helping a local organization in the San Francisco area that gives back to women survivors of domestic violence, specifically API women survivors of domestic violence, but also doing things like making sure that we're centering our voices, shopping API or BIPOC, educating yourself, talking, like Bea said, talking to our family about, things that might be hard, but basically shifting the viewpoint, centering the joy, centering the happiness, and then figuring out what we can do about it. So sharing more workshops like this, like Aspire does, mentorship programs, clubs, sharing the food and the stories. So these are just a few actionable ways, but ways that we are trying to reclaim the narrative. So we'll move on here, I think. And yes, Catherine, I see your question there. We'll get to that in just a second. So if anybody has any questions, we're gonna open it up shortly. We do have a link to purchasing the shirt, and all of the details are there as well. So thank you all for watching and staying with us. And I am going to let Carla take over.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the Tuk Tuk team, Allison, Bea, and Christy, for joining us for another Aspiring Talks or for Aspiring Talks. Tonight, Tuk Tuk Box led us through an amazing cooking demonstration. I hope you all shared or learned something about the recipe and learned something about their experiences and story. I know I definitely learned something about just harnessing the language and power of food. I hope you all enjoyed this workshop and have a wonderful meal that you created alongside this amazing organization. With that, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. These are some of the takeaways, and we will be sending these out in a recap email. If you want to share this experience through the recording, we will have one up on our website, girlsaspire.org, in a few weeks, as well as it will be distributed on our YouTube channel and on Tuk Tuk Box YouTube channel as well. We encourage you all to follow Tuk Tuk Box and Aspire in our various social media platforms, which will be included in the chat. But at this point, we'd like to kick off with a giveaway for all our attendees here, just as a special thank you for everybody who attended. So give me a minute while I kick this off. Here's a little bit more detail about the giveaway. I don't know, Allison plus team, if you guys want to refer to or talk about it.
Sure. So this is our standard Southeast snack box. So it comes full of goodies from all over Southeast Asia. So we might have cakes from Malaysia, drinks from Thailand, coffee from Laos. So I believe we're going to pick one winner or one person for this giveaway. And then we'll have you follow up and just send us.
So congratulations, Lily. It looks like you've the winner for this snack box. So we will be reaching out to you about how you can get that.
Yay. Thank you. Congrats, Lily.